Hey guys! So today we are going to talk about intelligence, or being smart actually. So let's get into it. Now, this is of course an extremely broad topic, and therefore I'm going to scope it to something that I think a lot of us we're forgetting that. I see this especially in people who have this belief. And I see this happening especially in the younger generation. They have this belief that they're stupid. A lot of people that I meet who haven't punched through the barrier of higher education or anything of that nature, they usually have one of two things. And some of them actually have both of these things holding them back. The first thing that they have is that they have a lack of motivation. And that's very tied into the second thing, but there's a lack of motivation. And that's not necessarily, that's not anybody's fault. I actually argue that it's one of the most horrible things a young person can have, and that is to have no sense of direction. To have nothing that they live for, to have nothing apart from watching television or listening to music. I mean, these are things that they're great, but they don't have something that drives them, something that they want to achieve, some goal or anything like that. Without that sense of direction, life becomes almost pointless. At least that's how I felt back in the day, before I found my purpose, if you will. And the second thing is that they have a belief that, or rather a disbelief, that they have the ability to be more than they are. They lack that sensation that I can do this. They lack the faith in themselves, that in their own capabilities. And I think that this has a lot to do with the way that the world is structured. And this is what I want to touch on, because I have seen this in so many people, not just young people, but people like a lot older than myself, and just in general. This, I think, is true for all ages. And what I've seen is that this belief that you don't have what it takes, or this belief that you're not smart enough and so forth, it grows from the way that your lifelong learning has been structured. A lot of people have something about them that they don't realize themselves. And the people that I argue that are the truly fortunate people are the sort of people who do very well with the standard format of learning something. In other words, if you are the sort of person who fit very well into the platform for how we generally in school and in companies and so forth solve problems, then you're very fortunate. But there are people who don't actually realize that you may need something different to solve the same sort of problems. Or you may need, what I like to say, do you understand what it is that makes you smart? What you need to be smart, because everybody is smart. It's about figuring out what is required for you to tap into that ability to solve problems and to be truly clever. I'll give you an example. So I have a coworker that he's a little bit of on the shy side, and after observing him, he is truly astonishing. He's an extremely intelligent person. If I put him by himself, I tell him that we have this problem, can you solve it? The first thing he will do is that he will isolate himself, go into his own thing, and then he will solve the problem. And even really complex problems he will solve himself. And whenever he's stuck, he will come and ask for a little bit of rubber ducking to kind of trade ideas in order to get his thought process going again, and then he solves the problem. If you sit him down in a meeting room with a lot of other people and ask him to solve the problem in front of all those people, he will completely fail. Because the context of his situation makes it impossible for him to actually structure his thoughts and actually solve the problem that he's facing. He does very poorly usually when it comes to standing in front of a crowd and presenting an idea. Then you have people like myself, for example, where I know for a fact that if you put me in a testing situation, in other words, if you sit me down in school at a written test and I am forced to take the finals, basically, I will do absolutely horribly, because I know that I don't have the opportunity now to experiment a little bit, to try out a few ideas to see which one I like. And I also am in the situation where I am trying to figure out what the teacher wants me to write, because I know that it's a form question. In other words, there's a limit to what possibilities that I can give, because even if I may be correct, if I don't write the correct answer in accordance to what my teacher expects me to write, I will still fail. And so I usually do very horribly in that scenario. On the other hand, if you put me in a group with people or pair me up with somebody else, with that person I know, or rather having somebody to kind of rubber duck with, I can solve extremely complicated problems in a very efficient manner. And there's almost no issue that I'm afraid of solving. I have a lot of confidence in that scenario. And the same thing goes for solving any type of problem. If you allow me to just sit down, relax, and think for myself, I will solve that problem. And this is something that a lot of people forget, and I see it all the time. They don't realize that you need certain things to be truly intelligent. A great example, and even people who, I see this all the time, I see people who don't actually understand their own abilities. They don't understand what they need in order to function properly. And it's that lack of self-insight can actually be very damaging. I had a colleague at my last job, and this guy, he had been a Java developer for many, many years, a senior Java developer for I think 10 or 15 years, something like that. Super senior. He had managed his own team and all of that good stuff, right? Truly astonishing, intelligent person. And then we basically had the need for a new front-end developer. So he decided that, hey, I'm kind of tired of this Java thing. I'll go over and do front-end development. And so he did. He had absolutely no experience with front-end whatsoever. And the company decided that, hey, it was worth the investment, because finding good front-end engineers is difficult, and keeping him on staff is still very useful. So I was charged with a colleague of mine to virtually train this person. Now, this person had worked 100% in a certain way, in a very specific way of working. He had conditioned himself, and he could only really work as an island, as a lone wolf. He would isolate himself, even in his own team. He wasn't part of our team, we kind of just mentored. He would isolate himself every single time, and he would try to solve the problems that was set in front of him. The issue here was that he didn't realize that this actually was a very destructive and very bad behavior for him to have, because he did not have the skills to actually produce the code that he needed. He used to have them in Java, but he didn't have them in front-end, or JavaScript, if you will. So basically we got to the point, this was actually a major issue. We had to have serious long discussions, and we couldn't let him go. We couldn't fire him because the managers wouldn't allow us to do that. But it was to that point. It was that close that we needed to relocate him or something, because he would not accept that the things that he needed something that was outside of himself. His own personal, I'm not saying ego, because it's not about ego, but his own lack of insight in what he needed to perform at his peak was a big problem for him. He didn't realize that he needed to change something about himself. He needed to change something about his process in order to actually tap into that big brain that he has. And you need to do the same thing. Because my guess is that you're not as stupid as you think you are. Have you ever wondered that sometimes, or rather ask yourself, this is better, ask yourself, when are you at your best? And try to really ask yourself that. Try to really figure out, what is it that you need to be truly astonishing, intelligent, whatever you want to call it? What do you need? Because we all need something. Just as you need a hug when you feel bad, or just as you need food to live, you need certain things in order to be truly astonishing. And if you can figure that out, a lot of things will start to make a lot of sense to you. Because trust me, at one company, as I said with my colleague, in one context, his ability to work completely independently and just be this island lone wolf type of person, that was a perfect fit for one situation. But it was absolutely horrible in another context. So figuring that out, knowing yourself well enough to know what you need in order to be at your best, that's a really good investment. Have a great day.